I never thought much about destiny until that final day working for Mr. Richards. For 7 years, I drove the aging tycoon around Boston in his sleek black Mercedes, maintaining a professional distance as I ferried him between skyscrapers and exclusive clubs. We rarely spoke beyond pleasantries and directions. Mr. Richards was a self-made real estate mogul worth over $200 million, famous for his ruthless business tactics and solitary lifestyle. At 78, he had no known family, no wife, no children, just an empire built on ambitious developments and calculated risks. His face was weathered from decades of stress, deep lines carved around eyes that had seen everything the business world could offer. I was just James Mercer, 32, a community college dropout with a clean driving record and the ability to keep my mouth shut. Perfect for a man like Richards who valued discretion above all else. That morning started like any other. I arrived at his Beacon Hill mansion at precisely 7 a.m., waiting in the circular driveway as he emerged in his customary charcoal suit. He looked frailer than usual, the weight of years pressing down on his narrow shoulders. "Good morning, sir," I said, opening the rear door. He nodded, sliding into the back seat with a grimace. "James, after you drop me at the office, I won't be needing your services for the rest of the day. In fact, this will be your last day." The words hit like a punch to the gut. 7 years of perfect service ended without warning. "Sir, did I do something wrong?" "Not at all. I've made arrangements for your severance, 2 years' salary and a letter of recommendation. My lawyer will have the paperwork ready when you return to collect your things this afternoon." I gripped the steering wheel tighter. "May I ask why?" His eyes met mine in the rearview mirror. "It's time for changes, James. Nothing lasts forever." I drove in silence, mind racing through possibilities. The economy was struggling. Perhaps he was downsizing, or maybe at 78 he was finally retiring, selling his empire and simplifying his life. When I pulled up to Richards Tower downtown, he paused before exiting. "You've been excellent, James. Never late, never complained, always reliable. I appreciate that more than you know." Then he was gone, disappearing through the revolving glass doors of the building that bore his name. I spent the day in a daze, driving aimlessly around the city, past the landmarks of our 7-year routine, the exclusive Commonwealth Club where he took lunch with politicians and power brokers, the hospital where he sat on the board, the waterfront where his latest development was transforming the skyline. At 5 p.m., I returned to his mansion to clean out my small office in the garage annex and collect my final paycheck. As I pulled into the driveway, I noticed an unfamiliar black Audi parked near the entrance. The front door opened before I could ring the bell. A tall, silver-haired man in an impeccable suit stood there. Walter Green, Richard's longtime attorney. "James, good timing. Come in." Green led me not to the garage, but to Richard's private study, a room I'd glimpsed only a handful of times when summoned for special instructions. Dark mahogany shelves lined the walls, filled with leather-bound books and mementos from decades of business conquests. "Mr. Richards isn't here?" I asked, feeling out of place among the luxury. "He's been admitted to Mass General. Nothing to worry about. Routine tests." Green gestured to a leather chair. "Please sit. There's something important to discuss before you depart." I lowered myself into the chair, noticing a manila envelope on the desk between us. "Mr. Richards authorized me to share some information with you," Green said, his expression unreadable. "Information he's kept private for many years." He opened the envelope and removed several papers. "Before I continue, I need to ask, did you ever know your father, James?" The question blindsided me. "No, sir. He left before I was born. My mother never spoke much about him, said he was just passing through Boston when they met." Green nodded, as if confirming something. "Your mother's name was Catherine Mercer, correct? She worked as a waitress at the Harbor View Hotel in the summer of 1990. A chill ran through me. "How do you know that?" "Because Mr. Richards remembered her." He stayed at that hotel while overseeing his first major development before he became the man the world knows today. I stared at the lawyer, understanding beginning to dawn. Are you saying Mr. Richards had a brief relationship with your mother that summer? When he learned she was pregnant, he was already engaged to another woman, a marriage that would secure his first major investment partnership. He chose his ambition. My mouth went dry. That's why he hired me. He knew who I was all along. No. Green shook his head. The connection was coincidental. He recognized your mother's maiden name on your application 7 years ago and suspected but never confirmed, until now. He slid a document across the desk, a DNA test result. Mr. Richards had this processed last week. It confirms with 99.998% certainty that he is your biological father. The room seemed to tilt around me. All those silent car rides, all those years of "Good morning, sir," and "Yes, Mr. Richards." My father had been sitting 3 feet away day after day, never saying a word. Why tell me now? I asked, my voice barely audible. Because Mr. Richards is dying, Green said simply. Pancreatic cancer, stage 4. He has perhaps 2 months left. I sat back, the revelation stealing my breath. That's why he dismissed me today, Green nodded. He couldn't continue the charade knowing his time was limited. But there's more, James. He produced another document, thicker, bound with a heavy clip. This is Mr. Richards's revised will, signed yesterday. He's leaving controlling interest in Richards Enterprises to you, along with his personal assets. The total value exceeds $230 million. I stood abruptly, the leather chair skidding backward. This is insane. I'm just his driver. You're his only child, Green corrected, and despite his failures as a father, he wants to make amends in the only way he knows how. By throwing money at me, after a lifetime of absence? By giving you the choice he never had, Green replied, between ambition and family. I left Richards' mansion in a daze, the DNA results and a copy of the will tucked into my jacket pocket. Green had given me Mr. Richards' hospital room number, suggesting I might want to visit. I wasn't sure what I wanted. For hours, I drove around Boston, past the apartment building in Dorchester, where my mother had raised me alone, working double shifts to put food on the table. She died of pneumonia when I was 24, never revealing the truth about my father. Had she known all along who he really was? Had she seen his name rising in prominence, his picture in the business section, while she struggled to make rent? Near midnight, I found myself pulling into the parking garage at Massachusetts General Hospital. My feet carried me through sterile corridors to the VIP wing, where the wealthy received their health care in private comfort. Outside room 718, I hesitated. Through the partially open door, I could see monitors blinking in the dim light, hear the rhythmic beep tracking the heartbeat of the man who had given me life, then abandoned me, then unknowingly welcomed me back into his orbit. I pushed the door open. Mr. Richards lay propped against pillows, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. The hospital gown had replaced his bespoke suit, and without it, he seemed diminished, mortal. His eyes fluttered open at my approach. Recognition, then understanding crossed his face. "James," he said, his voice raspy, "Green told you." I stood at the foot of his bed. "Were you ever going to tell me yourself? Or was I just going to get a surprise inheritance after you were safely gone?" He gestured weakly to a chair. "Please sit. I deserve your anger, but I'm not strong enough to argue standing up." I sat, keeping distance between us. "I recognized your mother's name on your application," he said. "The timing fit. I hired you partly out of curiosity, partly out of, I don't know what to call it, guilt, obligation." 7 years, I said, 7 years of silence. I convinced myself it was coincidence, that Catherine might have married, that Mercer might be a stepfather's name. I told myself it was impossible you were mine. He coughed, reaching for water. But the older I got, the more I saw myself in you. Your patience, your attention to detail, the way you analyze traffic patterns like chess moves. Why now? Why tell me when you're dying? His hollow laugh turned into another cough. Because I'm a coward, James. I built an empire, but couldn't find the courage to acknowledge my own son. Now, time has run out. And the inheritance. You think that makes up for everything? No. His eyes met mine directly. Nothing makes up for what I failed to do. The money, the company, they're yours by right, but they're poor substitutes for a father. He paused, his breathing labored. I'm offering them because they're all I have left to give. Something inside me, a lifetime of wondering, of feeling incomplete, cracked open. Tell me about that summer, I said. With my mother. A sad smile crossed his lined face. Catherine was extraordinary, quick-witted, kind, beautiful in a real way, not the manufactured beauty I later surrounded myself with. We met when she served me breakfast at the hotel restaurant. I was nobody then, just an ambitious kid with big plans and a small inheritance from my grandfather. Why did you leave her? Because I was offered a partnership with the Wellington Group. Old money, connections I desperately needed. But it came with strings attached. Marriage to the founder's daughter. In those days, business was still conducted through family alliances. His fingers plucked restlessly at the blanket. I chose the deal over Catherine, over you, the single worst decision of my life. Did you ever look for her afterward? Once, about 5 years later, after my marriage failed, the hotel said she'd moved on. I hired a private investigator, but he found nothing. He looked away. Or perhaps I didn't try hard enough. Success was intoxicating. Each new achievement made it easier to bury the past. We talked through the night, filling in the blanks of our separate lives. He told me about his rise through Boston's cutthroat real estate market, his 3 failed marriages, the emptiness of his massive home. I told him about growing up in Dorchester, about dropping out of community college when Mom got sick, about my dreams of someday starting my own small transportation service. As dawn broke through the hospital windows, Richards reached for a call button. "There's someone else you should meet," he said. Minutes later, the door opened to admit a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and a professional demeanor. "James, this is Dr. Sophia Patel, my oncologist," Richard said. "Sophia, this is my son, James." Dr. Patel's eyes widened slightly, but her composure remained intact. "It's wonderful to meet you, James. Your father speaks of you often." I shot a questioning glance at Richards. "Sophia knows everything," he explained. "When you're facing death, pretenses fall away. I've been talking about you for years, my driver who should have been my heir." Dr. Patel checked Richard's vitals, adjusted his medication, then addressed me directly. "Your father's condition is serious, but not quite as dire as he may have indicated. With aggressive treatment, we might extend his prognosis significantly." 2 months was the worst-case scenario, Richards admitted. "Without treatment, I've been resistant to Sophia's recommendations." "Why?" I asked. "What was the point?" His voice cracked. "My legacy was just buildings and bank accounts. Now..." He looked at me, really looked at me perhaps for the first time. "Now I have a reason to fight a little longer, if you'll allow it." 3 months later, I stood beside Richard's bed, not in the hospital, but in his home, now partly mine. The treatment had bought time, though we both knew it was temporary. His hair had fallen out, and his once commanding frame had withered, but his mind remained sharp. "The board meeting is tomorrow," I told him, arranging papers on the bed tray. "Green has prepared everything. They're expecting your video conference." "No," Richard said firmly. "You'll attend in person as my son and heir." "They won't accept me. I'm just a driver with a GED." "You're a Richards," he countered. "And you've spent the last 3 months learning everything about the business. You know more now than most of those MBA graduates." He wasn't wrong. Since his diagnosis, we'd spent every day in intensive education, Richards transferring decades of knowledge, me absorbing everything I could about the empire I would someday inherit. "Besides," he continued with a ghost of his old ruthlessness, "they don't have a choice. I still control 51% of the voting shares, and I've already transferred them to you." The next morning I entered Richards Tower not through the service entrance or parking garage, but through the main lobby, wearing not a driver's uniform but a custom suit. Walter Green met me at the executive elevator. "They're waiting in the boardroom," he said. "All 12 directors. They've heard rumors but know nothing definite." I nodded, feeling the weight of the moment. Let's not keep them waiting. As the elevator climbed toward the top floor, I thought about the strange twist of fate that had brought me here. 7 years as a silent witness to power, now stepping into its center. The boardroom doors opened to reveal the men and women who helped run Richards Enterprises, all looking up in surprise at the unfamiliar face entering alongside their lawyer. At the far end of the table sat Victor Drummond, the company's ambitious COO, who had been positioning himself as Richards' successor for years. "Where's Richards?" he demanded. "And who is this?" Walter Green stepped forward. "Ladies and gentlemen of the board, allow me to introduce James Richards, son of Harold Richards and, as of last month, the majority shareholder of Richards Enterprises." The room erupted in shocked murmurs. Drummond shot to his feet. "This is absurd. Richards has no children. This is clearly some kind of scam." I stepped forward, channeling the confidence I'd observed in my father for 7 silent years. "I understand your surprise, Mr. Drummond. It was quite a shock to me as well when I discovered my father's identity. I've spent the last 7 years as his driver." The revelation sent another wave of gasps through the room. "The driver?" Drummond scoffed. "This is a joke. You expect us to believe Richards is handing his billion-dollar company to his chauffeur? DNA doesn't lie." I replied calmly, nodding to Green, who distributed copies of the test results. "Nor does the shareholder registry, which Mr. Green has updated accordingly." As the documents circulated, I continued, "My father is continuing his treatment at home. He's transferred controlling interest to me, but he'll remain as chairman emeritus, and I'll be counting on his guidance as well as yours as we move forward." I looked around the table, meeting each shocked gaze directly. For 7 years, I've observed this company from a unique perspective. I've driven each of you. I've waited outside your meetings. I've listened and learned. I know this company's strengths and its vulnerabilities better than anyone suspects. I turned to Drummond, whose face had flushed red with anger and humiliation, including the fact that our Harbour View development is behind schedule and over budget, which you've been concealing from my father for months. His expression confirmed what Richards and I had suspected. The room fell silent. "There will be changes," I continued, "but not overhauls. This company is successful because of the people in this room, and the thousands of employees who make it work every day. My job is to honor my father's legacy while building our future." One by one, the board members' expressions shifted from shock to cautious acceptance. All except Drummond, who gathered his papers and stormed toward the door. "You'll be hearing from my attorneys," he snarled. "Actually," Green interjected, "your employment contract specifically prohibits litigation against the company or its officers as a condition of your generous severance package. The one you'll be receiving by end of business today." As Drummond slammed the door behind him, I took my seat at the head of the table, my father's seat. "Now," I said, opening my folder, "let's discuss the Harbour View situation." That evening, I returned to the mansion to find my father awake, anxiously awaiting news. "How did it go?" he asked as I entered his bedroom. I loosened my tie and smiled. "Exactly as you predicted. Drummond exposed himself, The others fell in line. Relief washed over his gaunt face. "And you? How did it feel?" I considered the question. Strange, like wearing someone else's shoes. But also, right somehow. He nodded, understanding. "It gets easier. The responsibility never weighs less, but you grow stronger beneath it." I sat beside his bed, in what had become our nightly ritual of business discussions and personal revelations. "I've been thinking," I said, "about Mom, about how different things might have been. For all of us," he agreed softly. "I want to create a foundation in her name, the Catherine Mercer Foundation, focused on single parents, educational opportunities, healthcare access, all the things she struggled with." Tears welled in my father's eyes. "Yes," he whispered, "Catherine would have loved that." We spent that evening planning not just company strategy, but a legacy bigger than buildings and balance sheets. A chance to right old wrongs and create something meaningful from our belated connection. 6 months passed, 4 months longer than the doctors had initially predicted. My father fought with unexpected determination, enduring brutal treatments that gave us precious time together. Meanwhile, I was learning to navigate my new role. The board had gradually accepted me, especially after the Harborview project was restructured and salvaged under my direction. The employees who once saw me as just Mr. Richards' driver now called me Mr. Richards. It was still jarring to hear. On a crisp autumn morning, I was reviewing quarterly reports in my father's study, my study now, when Walter Green called. "James, you should come to the hospital. It's time." I arrived to find my father conscious but fading, his breathing shallow. He motioned for me to come closer, his voice barely audible. "In my desk, 3rd drawer, there's a letter for Catherine. I wrote it years ago but never sent it. Find a way to get it to her." "Dad," I said gently, "Mom died 8 years ago." A single tear escaped the corner of his eye. "Then read it yourself. You should know," what I couldn't say. Later that night, Harold Richards passed away peacefully in his sleep, having outlived his prognosis by months. I was holding his hand when he took his last breath. The funeral was attended by Boston's elite, politicians, developers, competitors, and colleagues. They spoke of his business acumen, his visionary developments, his philanthropy. None of them knew him as I had come to know him, flawed, regretful, and ultimately human. After the service, I retreated to the mansion and found the letter he'd mentioned, sealed in an envelope yellowed with age. The paper inside was filled with his distinctive handwriting. The ink faded. "My dearest Catherine," it began, "if you're reading this, I've finally found the courage to face what I've avoided for too long. The day I left you was the day I began building an empire on a foundation of regret." The letter continued for pages, a confession, an explanation, an apology. He had written it 15 years earlier but never sent it, trapped between shame and pride. One line stood out: "Our child deserved better than a father who chose concrete and steel over flesh and blood. If I could rebuild my life as easily as I've rebuilt this city's skyline, I would tear it all down to start again with you." I sat with the letter until dawn, feeling the final piece of the puzzle fall into place. Harold Richards hadn't just been a ruthless businessman who discovered his conscience at the end. He'd been a man haunted by his choices, building higher and higher, as if to escape the shadow of his greatest mistake. 1 month after the funeral, I called the board together for a special announcement. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, standing confidently at the head of the table, "today marks the official launch of 2 new initiatives for Richards Enterprises." I nodded to my assistant, who distributed glossy presentation folders. First, the Catherine Mercer Foundation, with an initial endowment of $50 million. The foundation will focus on supporting single parents, particularly in education and healthcare access. The board members nodded approvingly. Philanthropic ventures were good PR, and the tax benefits were substantial. Second, I continued, a major restructuring of our employee benefits package, effective immediately. This drew more concerned looks. Drummond's replacement, Jennifer Hayes, spoke up. What kind of restructuring? Comprehensive parental leave for all employees, 6 months at full pay, on-site childcare at all our major office locations, college scholarship programs for employees' children, health insurance that actually covers families properly. The CFO cleared his throat. James, that's going to impact our bottom line significantly. Yes, I agreed, by approximately 8% in the first year. But our projections show employee retention will increase by nearly 30% and recruitment costs will drop accordingly. I turned to the windows overlooking Boston's skyline, the city my father had helped shape. My father built this company believing that success was measured in assets and acquisitions, but he learned too late what truly matters. I faced the board again. I'm not making that mistake. Richards Enterprises will be known not just for what we build, but for how we build it, and who we build it for. There was resistance, of course. Change never comes easily to established powers. But I had controlling interest, and more importantly, I had a vision that extended beyond the next quarter's profits. 1 year to the day after my father's revelation in his study, I stood in the lobby of a new building in Dorchester, the Catherine Mercer Community Center, built on the site of the apartment building where my mother had raised me. Inside were medical offices offering sliding scale care, childcare facilities, career counseling services, and educational resources, all the things that might have made my mother's life easier. As I cut the ribbon, surrounded by community members and media cameras, I thought about the strange journey that had brought me here. From the driver's seat to the boardroom, from fatherless child to heir, from employee to employer. The plaque by the entrance read, "Dedicated to Catherine Mercer and all parents who sacrifice everything for their children, and to Harold Richards, who learned too late but taught his son in time." That night, alone in what was now truly my home, I raised a glass to my parents, to the mother who had given me everything she had, and to the father who had given me everything he had left. The driver and the tycoon, different roads, same destination.